Does anyone else dream of using the bathroom over and over in their sleep if they have to go IRL? We'll get into that in a bit, but first, does anyone else think that from a certain age, elderly people should be tested to see if it's still safe for them to drive? It's hard to say from what age tests should be done. I'd say when people turn 70 or 75 years old. It's of course embarrassing for them to be tested, but I've seen so many old people do stupid and dangerous things on the road that I believe it's best for everyone's safety. For example, an old man who seemed to be barely able to see, judging on how he sat closely behind a steering wheel, with his mouth open, peering his eyes behind his thick glasses, was driving up the highway at 40 kilometers an hour. In Belgium, where the limit on a highway is 120 kilometers an hour, there were also examples from people driving the wrong way, people suddenly stopping their car for a turn on a high-speed road, driving up a roundabout when a car on it has to brake to zero. I have to drive a lot, so I've seen a lot. When I bring this up, most young people agree, until they're about 40 years old. Would you want to be tested if you're getting old? Well, yes, I would understand that it's best for everyone's safety. I'm 32 years old myself, and I realize that there are dangerous drivers from all ages. Drivers who have been caught 2 or 3 times speeding at highly irresponsible speeds should be denied a driver's license, in my opinion. Most of the time, they have a lot of money and they don't care about the fine. They don't seem to realize that they're a danger for everyone. Better to take them off the road before they end somebody. I feel like the police should be able to pick out drivers who clearly don't know the rules or clearly can't drive safely. After being caught after 1 or 2 warnings, they should take the tests, in my opinion. Either a medical test, a theoretic test, or a driving test. In some cases, all of these tests. That counts for all ages. Still, from around 70 years old, I think that people should automatically be tested, at least medically and theoretically, about every 10 years. I think it would be fair that they don't or barely have to pay for this. Although I'm not sure if that's possible without raising taxes. If politicians would earn less, which I think they should anyways, this wouldn't be too much of a problem budget-wise, I think or hope. Of course, some parts in traffic are confusing. I've also made some stupid errors, but if I would get tested, fair enough. In fact, in 2011, a drunk driver got off the road and hit me on my bike. I had a lot of brain damage and had to rehabilitate for 9 months. After the first 3 months, I could stay at home and I was allowed to drive by myself. They suggested that one of my parents would come with me on my first drive to see if I could still drive. My father judged that I could. Luckily, he was right and wasn't an easy judge, so I would drive by myself from that point. That's why I believe that people who suffered a brain trauma should also be tested officially, and police should check for a driver's license more often, as there are many drivers whose license have been taken still drive. So I guess from what OP describes, the older the person you ask, the more likely they're going to say no, they shouldn't. But am I wrong for agreeing with OP that if you're 70 years old and still driving on the road, there should be like some kind of basic cognitive test just to make sure? I remember a number of years back, and I just double checked, it was 2019, 97-year-old Prince Philip was driving his own car and got into a car crash, and only then did they finally decide, maybe this guy should stop driving cars. And apparently all he had done to get in the accident was pull out of the driveway. Drummer commented, "I'm pretty late to this, but oh well. 10 years ago, I drew up a procedure for response time testing for elderly drivers. I gathered data for elderly and impaired drivers and proposed a maximum interval of response. I took it to my state rep, who had gone on record saying he was interested in such things. He gave me 5 minutes and then said the AARP would sue you instantly for age discrimination." Fearless Complex 1410 commented, "I am 70 years old and I voluntarily quit driving last year because I felt I wasn't as alert as I should be. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy trying to figure out if anybody else is the same as you, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below?" That said, our next story is, does anyone else feel a weird sense of grief for the before times that you can't even really explain? I was in the grocery store today and saw a specific brand of soda I had not seen since 2019. It wasn't even my favorite, but seeing it triggered this sudden, intense wave of something. It wasn't quite nostalgia, it was heavier, a sense of grief for a world that just quietly vanished. It's not about the big, obvious things, it's the tiny, mundane stuff. the specific sound of a crowded food court at lunch, the feeling of not thinking twice about handing cash to a cashier, the way you could just spontaneously decide to go to a movie, the specific brand of soda at the grocery store. It feels like we all live through a collective trauma, then just agreed to never talk about it and pretend everything is normal now. But sometimes these little things pop up and remind you that the normal we have now is different and the before times are just gone. It's not that I'm unhappy now, it's just a strange, quiet sense of loss for a world that doesn't exist anymore. Does anyone else get this? So first of all, let me clarify that this story is about 10 days old at the time of recording this, so this isn't like some extremely dated COVID post or something. But I just gotta say, I'm a deeply nostalgic person in general. Honestly, once most things reach a threshold of time gone by for me, I start looking at them with rose-colored glasses, either lamenting the time gone by, or the experiences I can't have again, or the feeling that maybe I didn't do enough with the time I had back then. In regards to specifically what OP was talking about, I kind of feel that way about like cell phones in general. Like, I just feel like the way of life is so fundamentally different than even when I was a young kid, and having even like a flip phone was just barely becoming commonplace. Like, I remember being pretty darn little and my dad's friend came around and he had a pager and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. Anzai commented, "I'm not normally nostalgic, but I literally just went through all of my old files and paperwork about 10 minutes ago, and it gave me this nearly overwhelming sense of melancholy. Seeing the dates on things I remember as if they were maybe 2 years ago, but they were 8 or 9 years ago, really shook me. I think I might be in the verge of a midlife crisis, which isn't surprising, really. I've been looking for an excuse to quit my job and travel indefinitely for quite some time now. Almost did it a few years back, but then my mom passed and it didn't seem right to leave. That was 3 years ago though, and it still feels like maybe a little longer than a year. Time sucks, man. It accelerates the older you get. I'd always heard people say that when I was in my 20s, but I didn't expect it to be so much faster." Our next story is, does anybody else spread cheeks before doing their business, or is that just me and my husband? Okay, serious bathroom anthropology question. Before sitting on the toilet to do their business, my husband and I both instinctively do a quick manual cheek spread. I always assumed this was just a normal, efficient step in the process, but we mention it to friends, another couple, and turns out they don't at all. Which has now sent me spiraling about whether this is a common thing or if we've just been living in a two-person bubble of strange habits. So, do you do it too, or are we the lone cheek preppers out there? Edit, I use my hands on the cheeks but then use the seat to stay in position and take my hands off. For those debating, it's actually a quick movement and sometimes it's just a lift of one against the seat and adjusting with the other, if that makes sense. Edit, we're both on the thinner side and tall. Yeah, so, how do I address this? How do we talk about this one? I'm gonna keep it real. I'm not all that comfortable talking about these kinds of habits. I mean, the last thing I want is to develop a complex of, wow, you're a cheek prepper, or wow, you're not a cheek prepper. I mean, the fact that OP had to make this post, does that mean there is a right and wrong answer here? I guess my answer would be, it varies. Coffeeholic75 commented, I used to do that until I got hemorrhoids. Doc said, don't do that anymore, it stretches the skin around the you-know-what. So I stopped doing it, no more hemorrhoids. Our next story is, does anyone else think the 8-hour workday is too long? Hello friends, I just joined the sub, so I'm not sure if the question I'm asking has been asked before. I'm kinda certain it must have been, since humans are fundamentally work-averse. I just find the 8-hour workday of 9 to 5 so mind-numbingly boring. Time seems to slow down to a creep. The end of the shift seems like eons away. Yet, I have a relatively cushy office job. I'm sitting in a comfortable chair all day staring at a computer screen. I'm not out doing construction work on a blazing August day or laying cables on a frigid January morning. So why does all this seem so unbearable? Quitting working isn't an option. Idleness feels crazy making as well. It doesn't help that I have diagnosed ADHD. I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels trapped by this so common as to be unremarkable life situation. How do you guys cope? You know, I'm definitely the kind of person that if I'm stuck doing kind of the same thing for especially 8 hours, it does kind of drive me crazy and it's hard for me to keep focus. I've never actually been tested for anything and I'm not diagnosed with something, though I feel like I should. But I'm definitely not going to fault somebody for struggling for getting through an 8-hour shift, even if it's a job that people would look at and say, oh, it should be a breeze getting through that. Brianna Osberlin commented, I also have a cushy office job and everything you said resonates. I've worked much more stressful and physically demanding jobs, but the days didn't drag out into an eternity and make me question the futility of my own existence like a 40-hour office work week does. I've come to understand that all full-time employment sucks in some way. The fluorescent lighting and trying to tune out everyone else's noises all day is really tough as a neurodivergent. I have to keep in one ear pod and listen to music or a podcast to maintain sanity and stay focused, but I know my higher-ups hate it. They want me to sit around all day perky and poised to respond like a human Alexa. Our next story is, does anyone else smell periods before they happen? I can predict my wife's period correctly a week to 2 days before it starts. It's not exactly a smell as it is a sensation at the back of my nose. We've worked out over the years that I can smell it, a sharp iron smell, ovulation, a warmer, softer smell, pregnancy, smells like a warm kettle of water, and even, unfortunately, miscarriage, smells like raw meat before the people themselves know. When I was a teenager living with my parents and 2 sisters, I noticed that the smell I could smell in the house always coincided with when the pads appeared in the bathroom bin. You can imagine my teenage horror of realizing this. Worst superpower origin ever. It was always something that was just there throughout school, and it wasn't until I got married did I tell my wife about it, who was skeptical until I accurately predicted her period to the day for a whole year. Now she finds it fascinating and has never heard of anyone able to do it. My doctor even said it's strange, so does anyone else sense them? Edit, thanks for the replies. It's nice to know that I'm not alone and super freaking interesting to learn others have the same senses. So, I can't say that I've ever been able to identify such a thing myself, but I've definitely heard of people having this ability before. I've never even met anybody that was able to claim they could. So, heard of it, at least. Does kind of sound like a crappy superpower. Throwaway Back commented, it's rare, but yes, I've heard of people who can smell when someone has diabetes or other ailments. Our next story is, does anyone else have a tradition or practice in their family that you later found out was done out of necessity or some other reason? Here's my family tradition and the explanation. I inherited my great-grandmother's secret cheesecake recipe. It's been in the family for over 100 years. It's like those Japanese bouncy cheesecakes. No, I will not share the recipe. And it was always made in a 9x13 glass pan. It's how the handwritten instructions were written. Many years after she died, I made the cheesecake as a project for school, and the chef instructor asked, "Why the freak did you use the glass pan?" And I said, "It's how the recipe I inherited was written." And he asked me to try and figure out why, because he was baffled. I asked my grandmother, her daughter, why she never used a springform pan. Turns out great-grandma was poor. She never had the money to buy one, and later in life it just never occurred to her to get one. And nobody ever got one for her because it had become established as the way it was made. I've made it a couple of times with a springform pan, and it turned out nice. But I still use the glass 9x13 out of homage to my great-grandma. I can't say that I have anything as far as cookware goes. Most of mine that I inherited or was passed down is mostly because the family that they grew up in was struggling and didn't have all that much chef experience. Growing up, most of anything that was made just didn't really have much if any seasoning added to it, not even salt. Another cheapo example is whenever you have the instant ramen, you just get a Tupperware container, you put the seasoning, you put the noodles, and you fill it up with water, and you just toss it in the microwave for 5 minutes. I was never taught anything about actually boiling the water. Diane de Rivières commented, I remember a story about cooking roast beef. When a wife was cooking a roast beef, she would cut off the ends before putting it into the roaster. Once, she was asked by someone why she cut the ends off, and she said, I don't know. That's how my mom always does it. So the next time she saw her mom, she asked her, and the reply was that mom didn't have a roaster big enough, so she had to cut the ends off. Not a preferred way of roasting, but a necessity because of the size of the pan. Pufferoni and Cheese replied, grew up with one side of my family having a very peculiar amount of safety meetings. Anytime the family got together, there would inevitably come a time when one of the grown-ups would poke their head in and say, "Safety meeting in X's room," and all the other adults would follow. I naively thought that some people are just kinda weirdly cautious. My family must be some of them. Yeah, I eventually wised up and realized my family were a bunch of potheads, and that was their code for, "Hey, come in here and hit this," while in front of the kids. Felt a little dumb for not seeing it earlier. Our next story is, does anybody else notice the lack of self-awareness of other people in public nowadays? I swear, every time I go out in public now, everyone is just terrible, for lack of a better word. I will say right off the bat that I try my best to be considerate of others. I watch where I'm going, I say excuse me, I don't talk loudly on my speakerphone in public, just to name a few. But other people? Everyone is starting to act like they're the only ones shopping in Walmart. It's horrible. I walk in and immediately get cut off by some dude. He doesn't even glance my way or apologize, but I know he saw me. Then there is the screeching of a child immediately. Instead of the parent taking it outside because it's loud and disruptive, the way parents used to do when I was younger, it's called consideration. Then people just stop in the aisles and don't even move out of the way even when they see you there. They stop in the middle of the aisles and have long butt conversations with others like people aren't waiting. They have their 15 kids spread out over the aisles, running back and forth and causing people to nearly run into them. And you know the parents won't blame their precious angels because that would take accountability. Then I go outside to wait for the cab. This lady walks in front of the cab as he's trying to turn, so he has to wait. Once she goes by, he attempts to turn towards us again. Once again, the same lady walks back and in front of the cab. She sees him try to turn and just stomps on her merry way. The amount of times that someone just walks out in front of a moving car in the parking lot or even on the street is truly baffling. My mother-in-law nearly hit a girl who stepped right off of the curb into traffic without looking and didn't even acknowledge the car coming towards her. They don't even stop to make sure the car has seen them. They just go. Our cab was legit 5 seconds away from hitting a woman a few months back when she just strolled across the street without even looking and had the audacity to look at us like we did something. It is exhausting going out in public nowadays. By the time to get to the checkout, I'm angry and frustrated and feeling like, why the heck do I continue to be nice and polite and considerate when apparently the rest of the world has decided to be inconsiderate jerks? I wish they would open up 24-hour shopping again because I've had it. You know what? Let's go back to that. Does anybody else feel like they're missing the before times post and add 24-hour shopping to that? I remember going to Walmart at 3 a.m. for no reason and it being completely dead inside except for the one person waxing the floor. In all seriousness though, I do think that's kind of like, unfortunately, a quirk of shopping at Walmart. A lot of people there just straight up don't care. I mean, how many like memes over the years or like social media posts have you seen that popped up that are like, crazy Walmart customers compilation? Also, I have an older relative who uses the motorized carts. Just the other day, they were telling me about how they went to a grocery store and when they were done, they were going out and, you know, the pedestrian walkway that's right in front of the store, there were multiple vehicles that saw them on the motorized cart and sped up to go past them just in order to not have to wait to let them scoot the motorized cart across the walkway to the parking lot. Green Glass Dragon commented, I'm disturbed by how many young ones seem to have the perceptive awareness of a grandparent and wonder if it's from spending their childhoods in their own headspace rather than actual space. Sad Clown replied, this is why I try to go grocery shopping at 6 a.m. any other time of day and I have to wade through so many people who act like it's their first day on earth and don't yet understand how to behave. Just blocking doors, aisles, and checkouts, having a 20-minute chat standing right in front of the thing I need. Ugh, it ticks me off just thinking about it. Our next story is, does anyone else split up their life with apple and pie? I've been doing something called apple pie since I was a child. I'll say apple, and then time will pass, and maybe weeks or months later, I'll say pie. to close that segment of time, and then I'll say apple again to open a new segment. The time between pie and apple being said is lost, so I try and say it quickly, or I try and enjoy that time knowing it doesn't count. Sometimes I do it when there's a life-changing moment or big moment. Sometimes I'll do it when I just feel happy and content. When I was younger, it was mostly just random happy and content moments or if I felt the urge. Now, I give it more meaning and structure. For example, my current apple I started during a concert, during my favorite song. But this is from the past 5 years I've been doing it like that. I'm 22-year-old female. Thought I would share and see if anyone does anything similar. I'm gonna be honest, I think this might be the first one that I just don't know if I can relate to at all. Like, I get the concept of it, but I don't think I've ever had the idea of doing this segmented stop and start mental, checkpoint. Pitoir commented, "If I did this, I'd forget if I was on apple or pie." Joyous Jigglypuff commented, "I actually do something similar that I call blink and you're there. I'll blink. Yes, a literal blink, but I also bookmark the blink in my head, and then a period of time later, I'll blink again as if I time traveled from that first blink. Not quite what you do, but still cool to hear someone relates." Our next story is, does anybody else notice that their parents literally cannot watch movies anymore? My parents are in their early 60s, and when I try to watch a movie with them, it's absolutely shocking how poor of an attention span they have now. They get bored and irritable and restless if there's even the slightest bit of subtlety or nuance or artistry in how events are portrayed in a film. They whine about being confused by the simplest plot points. I'm not talking about Tarkovsky or French silent films either. These are giant action-packed blockbusters. I tried to watch Dunkirk with my dad and it was like he was watching gray static. He literally kept saying, "What the heck is this?" over and over again like he couldn't process the images on the screen. This wasn't always the case. The reason I thought he'd like it is because we watched Saving Private Ryan on DVD together 20 years ago, and he was absolutely enraptured by every minute of it. I'll never forget how furious he got when Upham wouldn't save that Jewish soldier from the German with a bayonet. He was practically jumping up and down, shouting and pleading with him to hurry up the stairs and save the guy. The other thing is, they both seem to still be able to appreciate movies that they enjoyed years ago. My dad absolutely loves Tombstone, but I'm not sure he can even follow basic dialogue from anything he hasn't seen before. My mom isn't quite as bad, but similarly, she seems to get angry when anything happens that isn't immediately obvious and or not spelled out really explicitly. When we watched Dunkirk together, she kept asking, "Who's shooting at them?" Despite the fact that I explained to her that this was a movie about the Germans closing in on the British. Who do you think would be shooting at the British in this movie about the British fighting the Germans? Is this just normal aging? A consequence of social media and phones? Both? I would be willing to bet both. And let me follow that up with saying, I'm no expert. What do I actually know? My parents are relatively old, but I've been spending a lot of time with my own mom watching things, and we just watched all of Dexter, and she had no problem processing that. We just started watching House together. She's having no problem with that and enjoying that. So it's not like it's a universal thing. I just think in general, a lot of people's attention spans are completely shot from social media. I mean, you're seeing it a lot with younger kids too. I'm pretty sure, and it may have even have been the last Does Anybody Else video, but I'm pretty sure I remember reading a story about a teacher who experienced kind of the same thing but with younger kids. They just can't make it through a movie because it's just too long for them. Like, movie time isn't even a reward these days to the kids. Hella Mad Scientist commented, I noticed my mom struggling more and more and finally realized it seemed to be her hearing. She's refused to admit that she's losing her hearing and she can't track what's happening in a movie, especially when there's a lot of background noise. When she's at my house, I always have on subtitles and she keeps up much better. Our next story is, does anybody else need face space when cuddling? So I can enjoy cuddling in bed, but some men really like to come mega close when cuddling, like almost touching noses. They would come and join me on my pillow and expect to talk this way when I have no air. Or when spooning, I can actually feel their face against my neck and they snore right in my ear. It instantly makes me tense and want to jump out of my skin. I try to tell them that I need face space, and some guys I've dated understand, but others just don't get the note. And I feel bad to continuously back away or push them back because it can seem personal. For this reason, I always tell them I prefer to be the big spoon, and this way I can decide how far apart our faces are. Like what the heck, this morning I was being spooned and his face was in my neck, almost on top of my ear, and he was breathing so loudly through his mouth, snoring slightly. And his cat came on the bed and lied in front of my face, and I couldn't even back off because his face was right behind. I jumped up and got out of bed because I just got so overwhelmed. Bad morning. Yeah, I'm with OP here, unless I'm doing like some diving stuff and I am desperately in need of air or like I'm drowning or something. I don't want to be doing some re-breathing stuff. I even love cuddling with my dogs, but I don't want to be in a position where I'm constantly breathing in the air they exhale. There's just something mental about it. Okay, Mix6856 commented 100%. I also prefer to be the big spoon because of this. I hate things touching my face, and I can't breathe in someone else's air. It freaks me out. Our next story is, does anyone else notice that the new generation are not having kids? I was born in 1999. I'm not against having kids. In fact, I would love to be a mom. But yet, I have none, and actually none of the people I grew up with have any either, except maybe a couple. When my mom was in her 20s, nearly all of her friends had kids, early 30s latest. None of my friends are against having kids, they just aren't having any for some reason. Actually, I noticed most people from my generation are more worldly and are traveling all over the world. The number one reason I don't have kids yet is because of how expensive everything is and how much financial stress I would have. People from my mom's generation probably had the same worries, but yet they were popping so many kids out. Were people back then just really careless with self-control? Was birth control failing? Did guys have no pull-out game? Okay, OP was kind of wild with that last one there. You know, I actually wonder how much the internet and social media has to do with this. Because let's be real, pre-internet and pre-social media, the world just was kind of a smaller place socially. When it's just so much more limited, information is frankly a lot more limited. Maybe settling down is a more likely outcome. That said, there's also the financial stuff. How many kids are still living in their parents' house well into their 20s these days? Carry What Carry Who commented, millennial here. This is something that seems to have started with my generation. Most of my friends have decided not to have kiddos and have opted to have incredibly spoiled pets and lots of vacations instead, myself included. Honestly, I just don't have the desire to spend all of my money and time on kids. This next story is, does anybody else have imaginary conversations in their head pretty much all the time? I do it pretty much all day, every day, to the point I feel crazy. Sometimes it's with people I know, and I'm not sure if that makes it more or less weird or crazy. I kind of feel like when it's someone I know, it's weird, and when it's someone I don't or someone imaginary, it's crazy. But what definitely makes it seem a bit crazy to me is that it's not like it's ever really sparked by anything. Like, I'm not seeing a picture and then going, oh yeah, they exist. If they were here now, what would they be saying? I'm just going about my day and all of a sudden I'm having an argument or a discussion in my head with someone I know. Normally just about whatever I'm thinking about. And then when it's not someone I know, it's usually not that I'm talking to a person I've seen on TV or anything like that, but I'm just talking to generic people. Anyways, I'm curious if other people are like this. So, I myself have full-on discussions, I have like podcasts, I host a cooking show in my own head for other people. Welcome back, here's how you make the perfect grilled cheese. First, you have to make sure you have the delectable, perfect first slice of cheese. I'm babbling to myself constantly, I'm having arguments with people and reanalyzing how I could have done better. I'm suddenly on stage at a TED Talk trying to deliver a speech about a subject that I'm weirdly, extremely knowledgeable about for no reason. Piece of Chaos commented, I think it's pretty crazy that some people don't have an inner monologue. No conversations with themselves. WTF people replied, who else would I have to talk to? Our next story is, does anyone else use the bathroom repeatedly in their dreams if they have to pee IRL? If I am sleeping deep enough, but I have to pee IRL, it will consume my dreams. I'll constantly be looking for a bathroom, and even if I find or use one, dream me never feels satisfied. It'll just be an endless stream of me needing to use the restroom no matter how many times I go. Obviously, this is because my real body needs to go, but it isn't enough to truly wake me up. I'll eventually wake up and realize why my dreams were so weird is because my need to actually pee. I assume I'm just in too deep of a sleep to be woken, but the sensation is enough to mess with my dreams. Does anyone else get this, or am I just weird? Disclaimer, this has never once caused me to wet the bed. Most of the time if I have to pee, I will wake up before it affects my dreams. Otherwise, I just get weird dreams. I think what OP described here is actually probably, I would assume, a pretty common experience. Kind of the same thing if like you're sleeping on your shoulder wrong and you have some shoulder pain or numbness or something. You know, I've definitely had some close calls before where I'm watching a waterfall and man, it's mighty inspiring. DBSeemZ commented, if I need to pee in my dreams, I'll never be able to find a satisfactory bathroom. Either doors labeled bathroom will lead to stairwells or other non-bathroom places, or there won't be a toilet in the bathroom. Plenty of sinks, occasionally a maze of shower stalls. Once I found a porta potty that was just an empty plastic box. Every now and then I'll find a toilet that isn't private, such as in a stall without a door. This has happened less frequently ever since I dreamed up a sink-only bathroom in a shopping mall, thought while standing there, that's weird. Usually I only find rooms like this when I'm dreaming. Left the store and forgot I even needed to pee. I think my subconscious brain finally realized that it should just wake me up to use a real bathroom when I need one. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to try and figure out if anybody else is quite like you, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.